Here are the most important things you need to know about conditional reasoning. Okay, so take a look at this example conditional statement I have above me. If I'm in Austin, then I'm in Texas. We know this to be true in everyday life, right? So we're gonna keep it as is. Now I want you to understand that within every single conditional statement, there are two parts. There are what are called the sufficient condition and the necessary condition. The sufficient condition is what guarantees the other condition. In other words, if the sufficient condition occurs, the necessary condition must occur, okay? The necessary condition is the requirement for the sufficient condition to exist. So let's kind of break down the different possibilities because people have these common assumptions regarding how conditional statements work. And believe it or not, most of us have been using conditional statements incorrectly our entire lives. So let's go through this real quick. First off, let's see what happens if the sufficient condition triggers. Well, if I'm in Austin, right, that is my sufficient. In that case, I know for a fact I'm in Texas, right? So going back to the point earlier, the sufficient guarantees the necessary. But what if I'm not in Austin? Notice how if I'm not in Austin, that still doesn't necessarily mean I'm not in Texas, because I could still be in Dallas, I could still be in Houston, I could still be in so many other cities within Texas, right? Now, it is still possible that I'm not in Texas too. I could still be in a completely different state or even a completely different country. So the main takeaway here is if the sufficient condition does not occur, we simply don't know what happens to the necessary. It's completely open-ended. Now, what if the necessary condition occurs? Well, then in this case, that would mean I'm in Texas. But again, if I'm in Texas, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm in Austin, right? I could be, again, in Dallas, I could be in El Paso, San Antonio. There's so many other places that I could be, okay? So for that reason, and by the way, it is still possible that I'm in Austin too, right? But for that reason, if the necessary condition occurs, we also have to withhold judgment regarding the sufficient. We have no idea, okay? So then last but not least, what if I'm not in Texas? Well, in that case, that would mean the necessary condition has not happened. And so if I'm not in Texas, that actually doesn't tell me exactly where I am. I still have no idea, but I know for a fact that I'm not in Austin. Okay, so the main takeaway here is if you get rid of the necessary condition, you must get rid of the sufficient. There is no other way around it. So just to kind of summarize, there's only two situations in which you actually know what happens to the other condition within a conditional statement. The first way is if the sufficient condition occurs, in which case we know the necessary condition happens. The second way is for the necessary condition to not occur, in which case we know that the sufficient does not happen. Any other situation, we have no idea what happens to the other condition.